You're listening to the PoolePRoof Wisdom Podcast, where we bring our authentic selves, refuse to raise grown folks, and share wisdom you can use. With your host, Charles K. Poole.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Well, in case you didn't know it, everyone will get older if you're lucky. That's a fact. But letting increasing age become an excuse for not living a life where you can remain active, feeling good most of the time, and able to do the things you want to do is on each of us. Truth is, as people grow older, they buy into the idea that we're supposed to take it easy, settle down, and otherwise just become a pillow on the sofa. And it's that behavior that begins to impact our overall health, functional movement, and sense of well-being. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. Which brings me to today's guest, Tom Barbata, who has made it his mission to help those of us over 40 maintain our ability to move, build strength, and live healthier, productive lives. Tom holds a Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from Washington University in St. Louis, a master's in healthcare administration from Colorado State University, and a bachelor's degree from the University of Missouri, St. Louis. He's a husband, father, and brother, a U.S. Army veteran who has also been a personal trainer and owner of 2 fitness companies. One of his personal goals is to always strive to be a better human in every way, and helping others find a path to wellness that enables them to do the same. And today, we're going to talk about all that and more, including how to make your body a better place in which to live your life, starting now. Good day, Tom Barbata, and welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you could join us today. How are you?
Great, Charles. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course I would. You know, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I'm very happy that you could find time to do it because I do know you have quite the busy schedule to keep up with. And so the first thing I want to start with is when I met you all those years ago, and it's interesting because I was fat then and I'm still fat, not because of what you did or didn't do, but because of my own body, but you were a personal trainer. And I did not know when we met that one day I'd be talking to Dr. Tom Barbata, since you hold a Doctor of Physical Therapy degree. The journey from that point when we met to now is one that is rich in detail, and I'd love to talk about it. So tell me about that journey.
Yeah, sure. My love for movement and exercise came from before you and I met, because I struggled a little bit with body image and body weight myself. Through my military career, I had a hard time of being fit and making good choices. And I think I was out of the Army maybe a year when you and I met. And by that time, 7 months before I got out of the Army, I had this really influential person in my life. He was our first sergeant. He was maybe the toughest man I ever met in my life. He was an exercise machine. I didn't necessarily want to emulate him as far as the personality that he had, but I was really impressed with how fit he was, and the fact that he just, anything that came up, it was no factor. Like, he could just do it. And so I took a personal journey to get myself fit, and it was such a life-changing thing for me that's when I got out of the Army, I had another job in the Army doing communications work. As it turns out, I had the aptitude for that, but not the interest. And so I decided to go back to college, and in the interim, I went and got my personal trainer certification. And so that's kind of where you and I jumped into, right? And so from there, I worked at that St. Louis workout is where we met. And I was on track to be a physical education teacher. I was going to be a gym teacher. And I did some classroom time and decided after 2 days in classroom as a student that would be maybe the worst decision I made in my life.
So the thing is, I remember working out with you. You were a beast. I You were an excellent trainer. I mean, like I said, I actually lost weight working out with you, and I was a lot younger then, so that's another story.
Yeah, you and me both.
Well, ain't that the truth, though? But the thing I remembered was that you had a kind of no excuses mentality about working out. And given some of your heroes, I know that you are a big fan of the book Can't Hurt Me, and that guy,
Yes.
David, is it Goggins?
David Goggins, yeah.
Yeah. And so that mentality worked. And I pretty much let myself do everything until you had us do that thing, which was the trek from St. Louis workout, which was housed in the then named Chase Park Plaza, and run around the park. And I remember I had this moment, Tom, where I was like, this man that lost his mind. Not getting ready to park. So
I had an experience working out with that group that everybody had a day like that working out with me. Everybody had their day where they decided I wasn't maybe the greatest friend they ever had.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
But you and I have remained friends after all these years, and that's by virtue of who you are as a human being. So even though you kicked my
ass
repeatedly, I still found all of the worthwhile reasons to remain a friend. Now, tell me, after that point, though, to go and get the degree, where did you make that transition that said, okay, now I want to do more with this?
To go get the degree?
Well, beyond your undergraduate degree, you then went on to get Right.
Yep. Yeah. So I was actually working down the road at another location, still doing training and trying to decide if teaching was what I was going to do, and it didn't feel like it was what I was meant to do. And a fellow that I worked with down there, he'd been drafted by the then named Redskins. And his wife was in PT school at WashU. And we got to chatting, and she's like, this really seems like it makes sense for you. Like, you love this training thing that you're doing, and you could really make a career out of doing this. And, personal training is a hustle. It's not, I mean, I don't know what the masses think about how that goes, but it becomes more of a salesmanship kind of gig than it is actually, especially when you're working in the gym, then actually, I mean, you help people for sure, but you gotta hook them first. And man, this seemed like it made sense. It's still in that vein of helping people, doing exercise. And man, it was for sure the best choice I've ever made. It was and PT school was hard, but there was never a moment where I was like, I don't think I want to do this. Like it was all in.
So that's a big important step, I think, because let's face it, there is a kind of stereotype that goes with personal trainers that they're stupid. That they're stupid. Personal trainers are very attractive, stupid people. And it's so wrong. Talk to me about that perspective, because let's put it this way. I have one basic rule. I think personal trainers have to look like a personal trainer, like they actually do something. So that's not intended to body shame anybody. But if I'm trying to aspire to something that you seemingly have, you've got to look that way. But at the same time, I don't necessarily have any sense of what you do or what you don't know, but I trust that the fact that you're certified that you can help me. But when it gets to the area of academia, and to your point about PT school being hard, to make that leap and then get into that, how were you challenged by PT school?
I'll tell you. And so my undergrad experience was like the extension of high school for me. Like in the sense of, I mean, I put work in, but it was never stressful. I guess to toot my own horn, I graduated from from UMSL with I think I had a 3.9 something GPA. Right? So, and then you walk into PT school and everybody graduated from undergrad with, a 3.9 GPA. So you're kind of in the, back, the bar's been raised, and you're amongst peers who are of the same intellect, which was wonderful actually. And I'll tell you, it was humbling. I had out of the 6 semesters, I had a class, I think of each of the 3 semesters that I had to have a tutor to help get me through. I mean, it was just the volume of information, so much. Yeah. And so it was, and we had babies then. So Hannah was born my first semester, and then Abby was born at the end of my second year. And so it was, God love her. My wife is a trooper, because it was get up in the morning, and I was still teaching my boot camp class then. So get up in the morning, go work out with a group of people, go home, take a shower, and maybe come home at 11:30 after studying, and and she held it down.
Well, first of all, your wife, by the way, folks, her name is Brooke, and she is a superstar. So let me just say that right here. But as you're going through those things, tell me about challenges with self-doubt and what you were able to tap into, because to do all of those things with a goal in mind, you obviously had a family to provide for, you had goals for yourself, but how do you find the impetus when you are stressed out, when you are challenged as you were, to keep going? What did you rely on?
I relied on the fact that I didn't have a plan B. Honestly, I mean, I didn't, there was no backup plan. I mean, I got into PT school, and that was the game. So, if it was with 2 kids at home, and I have another son, he didn't live with us full time. That's so 3 kids I'm providing for. It was really a have-to situation at that point.
Never a thought of giving up.
Not in PT school. No.
Wow.
No.
Wow. See, that's the thing. Normally when people get to the point where there's so much stress, so much required of them, they take one of 2 directions. They batten down the hatches and they keep digging through, right? Or they say, I can't do it, it's too much, and they go another way. And there's no judgment, no matter what the circumstance is. But it's the how of it that I find fascinating, because a lot of people can use those same particulars that you outlined as a reason why it was too much. But you chose to see them as, this is something I have to do, something I have to complete. And you got through all of that, and then you went on and you decided to pursue even more education.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, we lived in a little rural town in Colorado for almost 15 years. And I was highly invested in the hospital when I worked there, and worked myself from being a frontline staff therapist into being a therapy manager, and eventually the director of the department. And I really felt like I needed to have a better sense of business to be the department director. It wasn't, as it turns out, it wasn't required, but I felt like it was an important step for me to take, if I was going to be responsible for, I think it was 40 employees, and and the financial success of a department, I needed to understand the inner workings of a hospital.
And after that period of time, you put in that work, you put in that effort, and then the family picked up after a number of years and moved back to Missouri. You're in Columbia now?
We are in Columbia. Yep.
And that was, of course, necessitated by a lot of different things, one of which I do recall you saying is that you want to move back to be among family that you have based here. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. We don't see them as much as we probably thought we would, but we are closer. We see them more often. My mom lives alone, and my brother and sister live nearby. She's in the Maryville area on St. Louis, or the Illinois side of St. Louis. And Brooke's mom is a widow, and Brooke is the only sibling left in her family that's around. So we just felt like we needed to be reachable, and have a little bit closer connection. And so we've come to Columbia, and this is where we are.
And one of the things that's interesting about your family, and we're going to come back to family in a broader context a little bit later, but your family, your wife, your children, and all of the goats and farm animals and all of the other things. You live on a farm.
Well, yeah, a working I don't want to call it a hot farm, but it's we have I don't know, there's like 9 goats out there and 15 chickens and 2 horses, and we've got a couple of sheep right now and 3 dogs. So
and growing as we speak, I think.
man, I hope we're maxed.
You post regularly after Brooke or one of the kids posts something about some new creature that living with you with these questions as if you didn't know that was happening. And I just crack up whenever I see them because I'm like, I wonder how much of this is real, how much of it isn't.
Maybe 80% is not real. I mean, clearly we communicate, but there was a time, I mean, baby chicks don't take up a lot of space, but I came home and I was like, what is this? Like,
right.
We have 15 baby chickens here.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. And you have what you do as what I like to call your day job. And, that's what you do as a, extension of all of the experience that you have in physical therapy. But you've recently begun a new venture of your own that I want to talk with you about today. And for anyone who's gone to bed at night, who is 40 and over, or hell, even if you're younger than that, you go to bed at night and you're feeling good. You're like, it was a great day. But then you get up the next morning and you go to throw your legs over the side of the bed and nothing moves because you've got a huge pain in your hip. These types of things are issues that many people have. Now, a lot of folks will use that as an excuse to say, I'm just getting older. I'm supposed to be getting worse. But your practice as a person who is focused upon physical therapy is to help people understand that is something that may happen, but isn't something that necessarily should be something that you just accept. Tell me about this new venture.
So this new venture, it's kind of a coaching version of physical therapy. Instead of being clinical, it's all done virtually. I have someone who reached out to me. I'll use an example. Someone reached out to me. They're having some numbness and tingling in their hand. And she has a very similar lifestyle, but she's kind of got a little farm going herself. And she says, every time I swing a hammer or pound fence post in, my hand goes numb and I can't sleep in bed and this and that. So we talked pretty extensively about what she's got going on, because I want to make sure I can help her.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a coaching situation, not a giving medical advice situation. Right. I think that's really important to delineate. But it turns out like it was very, very pretty for me and anyone who analyzes movement. I think it was pretty easy to see like, you have very interesting postural things going on. And so, we meet weekly. I update a program for every week. And I make myself available to her whenever she needs me. So via text, via voicemail, whatever. Hey, I did this exercise. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. I'm just, hey, quick, send me a video. Let me see how it looks. And so it's fun. It's successful and with her, and it's fun. It takes all the things that I love to do in my day job and boils them down into the best parts of it. If I'm being honest, like I don't have to worry about insurance companies approving what I do. I don't have to worry about, scheduling, or they can't make an appointment because we do it all online. Like it makes the access very easy. To be honest, my clinical practice has always not been very hands-on in the sense of I'm not somebody that you're going to come in, as you probably would guess, Charles, and get a massage from.
None of that is happening with your venture. We get that. Although there will be those who try. You may find some interesting messages in your DMs from time to time, I'm sure. So with that, you're looking at something that goes back to when you had mentioned it earlier, when you were just personal training, that you were always interested in the helping of people perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
Why over 40 in most instances in this particular venture?
Why over 40?
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's relatable for me. I am 48. So it's not like, so I understand a lot of what people feel day to day, clearly. And I also understand that there is a lot of stuff out there that people, and I mean, this is mainstream things that we hear that aren't true, that people believe. And I have become a giant believer in, pain can manifest itself through belief. And so if you believe something to be true because of someone in authority, like a physician, has told you that it's true, then you have made up your mind that you're not going to get better and you need some sort of intervention, whether it be an injection or drugs or a surgery. And of course, there's a place for all those things. I'm not saying exercise is a miracle and fixes all things, but let me tell you, it fixes a lot of things.
Yeah. I can relate to that. It's interesting. You have your aches and your pains, and something that became apparent to me, at least, is that inactivity is a kind of organic reason for a lot of issues. So I tend to get busy at work, and I've got multiple things that I'm doing, and like millions of people, the busier I become with my grind at work, right? The less time that I take doing things for myself, particularly exercise, because I've said it before, I understand the benefits, but unlike some people, I will never love it. It's something that I do, but it's not something that I love. Some people love it. But what I found is I do have some limitations. I've got a bad knee, I've got a bad shoulder, but I have a rower, which, I can set the setting so that it's not going to hurt me, but I can still get a good overall full body workout. You do that for a few days, and those mysterious pains, those aches, they somehow dissipate, which speaks to your point, because your body is actually happier doing the things it's meant to do than just laying around and you becoming a person who's the pillow on the sofa.
Yeah. How many years have we as a society had the luxuries that we've had?
Right.
50 years, 60 years, maybe a little bit more. Like, I mean, if you rewind back to your great grandparents and, they were working out in the field or they were doing annual labor. And before that, we were hunter-gatherers. And I don't necessarily buy into the point of like, some things are ingrained in our genetic code and that goes down a whole different road. But the point is that your body is meant to move.
Right.
And we're made to move. And, all those things you're talking about moving, if you aren't using the muscles in your thigh, your knee might not track properly. And so now you've got some patellar problems because you don't have the strength in your quads that you're supposed to have. Your shoulder hurts because, not you particularly, but for example, you sit at a desk all day with your hands out in front of you and your posture
that's me.
is terrible.
Yeah.
And your hands are funny because you're typing, and so your shoulders are down, and you've got, this little shelf right here on the top of your shoulder, and that's part of your shoulder blade. And there's got to be space in there for those muscles to work. And if you're pressing down on those all day, and all of a sudden I have shoulder pain right out here on the lateral part of my arm, because my back wasn't strong enough to support my scapula. Like, it's on and on.
Yeah. And it's a whole issue because, I literally have to remind myself we have the ability where I work to have the desks that raise and lower. So that's a blessing. But I have to remind myself because it's so easy to fall into that space of, I do mostly writing for what I do. And you just get lost. Hours go by and you're sitting in a seat, same position, and you go to stand up and you're like, oh my God, this is so crazy. But it's larger than just the office experience, everything. And you've got, young people, so I know you can relate to this, but they're always laying around on their phones or the neck is down looking at the phone. It creates all kinds of issues that you wouldn't otherwise have from overusage. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time, like, you're going to get tech neck.
Yeah.
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 I mean, prolonged, two things, it's not the only two things, but two things that I see clinically is prolonged positioning and repetitive motion. Those are the two things that really cause pain in a lot of people. So if you stay in one position for too long, especially if your alignment is poor, you're going to have pain. Or if people who have factory jobs or even work at a desk and they're always answering the phone to the left and their printers to the left and their copy machines to the left and everything, and they turn that way all day long and they tell me, well, my low back hurts or my neck hurts, and it's always when I turn to the left. And I'm like, tell me about your day. And I'm like, see, like, yeah. So I think we just don't realize how much we do the same stuff over and over.
That's right. That's right.
It's attending to that is a big deal. I talked to a nurse this week who told me that she had pain in her right shoulder, and we walked through her day, and it turns out she opens doors probably 100 times a day from patient room to patient room with her right hand. Yeah. Like, who would think opening a door would cause pain? There you go.
There you go. And getting back to the older of us, I mean, the younger people are more resilient. They'll bounce back a lot faster on average. But for the rest of us, there's also this thinking, when we start to get to a certain age, take it easy. Let's start thinking about retirement. Everything becomes a life of leisure, allegedly, right? And the idea is that all of that atrophy that comes from being retired, from taking it easy, comes back to haunt us. And yet it does seem to attack certain people more so than others, but those others are at least usually doing something on a fairly regular basis to, as we've been talking about, keep their entire body engaged. But could you just briefly talk about what atrophy is in terms of non-usage so that people can understand that?
Yeah, for sure. So atrophy is the loss of muscle mass. So your muscles shrink when you don't use them, right? And so someone who is 30 years old, this is a generalization because when women go through menopause, it's a little bit different and all these other things. But if we take an average person and we take two people who are 30 years old and one is active and the other is not active, the person who is active is going to lose far less muscle mass over their lifetime, especially with resistance training, than the person who is inactive. And if you're inactive, you lose about 1% of your muscle mass per year through your lifetime. So from the time you're 30 to the time you're 80, that is 50%. You've lost half your muscle mass. So now you don't have the same hip strength. You don't have the same core strength. And so you get up out of a chair and what happens? You lose your balance and fall down. Like, people who are elderly that fall generally are people who have been inactive. And it could be what you said. They were active. I know of a lot of people who are active when they work and they dream of that sedentary life.
Exactly. And
then they lose, they retire at 60 and 20 years later, they lost 20% of their muscle mass and they don't have good control of their body anymore.
Right.
And they fall.
Right. And the impact of muscles on stabilization can't be overlooked by anyone, no matter what their age, but particularly as we get older, right?
Yeah. Well, it's one and the same, right? Muscles aren't just, so your muscles do one thing. They contract. They're contractile units. So at the microscopic level, these little units that contract and they shorten your muscle fibers and they make your joints move, right? I contract my biceps muscle, my elbow bends. I mean, that's the simplest explanation of how muscle works. But we have them all over and in different places. And their job is to help us move the way we're supposed to move. And so that, I always think it's funny that people come in and like, the doctor said, I just need to do some stabilization exercises. I don't necessarily need to get strong. And I'm like, well, that's the same thing.
Right.
It's the same stuff.
Wow.
And
when you're looking at something like that, Tom, that's something I find a little bit fascinating because people tend to think that these things are separate operational requirements for them. But we're talking functional movement, basics like walking, reaching up into a cabinet, whatever the case may be. I will tell you, I have no shoulder strength whatsoever. If I try to do anything that involves work overhead too long, my shoulders just wear out. So the idea is to do something that's going to involve resistance training of some type to help me rebuild that. I'm not going to get it by just wishing it to be so. And most people want to think that resistance training, lifting weight, is just too much work. but it's exactly the stuff that we need to help build the muscles. How do you help a client understand that distinction?
Yeah, it does go back to function a lot. Like, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to get back to doing? What is it that you're trying to do? What are you having trouble with doing? We can outline those things. Say, I really want to be able to pick up my child. I really want to be able to pick up my grandchild. Okay, well, let's talk about your pain. Well, my shoulder hurts. Well, we're going to have to strengthen that shoulder. It's not going to just magically be better all of a sudden, right? And
Right.
it's a process. You can't, and you have to do it safely too, right? You can't just go to the gym and start pressing 50-pound dumbbells over your head if you've never done it.
Right.
You're risking more new injuries.
Mm-hmm. Well, you spoiled me for personal trainers going way back when we worked together, because I remember when I moved to LA, I went to this gym and, I interviewed people to be my trainers. You were kind of assigned to me, but that turned out to my benefit.
But we did have a little bit of an interview.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally will interview people now.
Yeah.
And this one guy was like, "Oh man, when I get through with you, you're going to be so ripped." And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in, I always tell people this: I want everything to be in the place where it's supposed to be. And I want to be able to move without limitation. Those are my two goals at this point. I am closer to 62 now than 61 because that's just the way it is. But as a result, just functionally moving, throwing those legs over the side of the bed when you get up in the morning without there being an ache or pain accompanying it. These things are important. And so when you're talking about this work that you're doing with people who are older, part of it is a mindset change, an expectation change. And as you're having these conversations with these clients that you're engaging with now, outside of the day job, what are you finding is the most surprising thing that they're picking up from you, that once they hear it, they realize how much opportunity they have to improve the quality of their life?
Well, I think that's a tough question. I don't know that I've gone through it with enough people to be able to speak to that well. But the one young lady I'm working with, she's not that, she's younger than me. So, but she's a mother of 4, and she just wanted to be able to sleep in her bed. She's been laying in her recliner because her hand goes to sleep, and she just wanted to be able to sleep in bed. And she's pretty body aware, like, I don't know how, in my world, you learn pretty quickly how aware people are of how they move in space. And some people is amazing. You're like, wow, I don't have to tell you anything, and you can correct just like that. And other people, I'm like, how do you move? How do you even function? You can't, so anyway, I think some people just really need affirmation sometimes. Like, I really think a lot of people know what they should be doing sometimes, and they need that voice to affirm it for them.
Yeah. And see, once again, you answered the question perfectly. You're like, I don't know if yeah, you do. You knew. And I think that's important, because in every aspect of life, and here I'm about to get off on a brief little soapbox, I find that people render themselves powerless because they believe that they cannot. So I have a saying, which is, instead of wondering about your why don't you ask yourself about your why not? Why not try this? Why not put myself into something that's a little bit more challenging? Why not take this advice from this guy and see if that's going to improve? So once people realize just how much power they have to change their own lives, I think it shocks the hell out of them. That all along is almost like a Wizard of Oz thing. You always had the power, you just had to tap into it. And where you come along, that's interesting, imagining you in that light. I guess you become the good witch Glinda, don't you? Where you wave your wand and say, all will be well.
I do have that dress, so.
Well, you know what? I'm sure it's going to show up in one of your posts recently. So
maybe.
Just saying. But I think that the education is important because, granted, you've got all of this knowledge clinically, all the things that you've done, but so much of this is a person-to-person type of engagement where you help remind them of what they're capable of. And when they see the results from that, I think it can actually, and I'm not asking you to talk about it in terms of your clients, but I'm just talking about it in general. I think that once people see what they can do, it helps encourage them to perhaps even want to do more often.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about this week as I was updating a couple of people's programs, that when I go to my day job and I'm in clinic, I stand over you, I watch you do your exercises, I make little corrections, and you are on autopilot, right? You have zero ownership of your program, and I do my best to educate, and I do my best to okay, and make sure you do this at home, and this is what you should be doing. But you know that you're going to come back and see me, and I'm going to take you through that again later this week or whatever it is. The difference with this coaching business is that I'm giving you the knowledge, and it's on you to do it yourself. And I think that really, as you said, it really does empower people to know that they can get themselves better, and become much more aware of what they're doing with their body than me saying, oh, your knees turn out a little bit, maybe you should do this. I give you the guidelines, you go do it. If you have any problems, come talk to me, and I'm happy to help you, of course.
Right. Now, how does that apply to what you're doing? Because just knowing you as I do, I don't think that you ever think anything's too hard for yourself. You do these rucks, and you're always doing this and challenging yourself, and you work out like a demon. You do. How has your own experience, as you mentioned earlier at the start of this, how has your own experience with injuries and pains and recoveries perhaps taught you to be a little bit kinder to yourself versus where you used to go? Because you would go so hard, it was crazy. How has that changed?
Yeah, I think it's changed more with my family lifestyle than it has with my own injuries and experience, because I've actually been pretty fortunate. I've had a little shoulder thing, I've had a little low back stuff going on, like anybody who's in their 40s, but I've never, knock on wood, I've never been orthopedically laid up for an amount of time. I can't exercise. So hopefully that's because of the self-care that I've done over the years. But we have 4 kids at home. And actually, a great example is 10 minutes before we got on this podcast, my 17-year-old daughter comes and says, I have a flat tire. Right. And I was like, so there's only so many hours in a day. And so I'm either going to not sleep, or I'm going to have to give myself some grace on, doing or not doing certain things that I would have done, in my past life.
So how would you characterize then how exercise fits into your life and what purpose it serves for you now?
So it's funny you asked me that today, because we are at the tail end of baseball season. I literally, between my day job and baseball tournaments, I haven't had a 2-day weekend since the end of February. And so, as you can imagine, the timing of exercise has been tough.
Right.
And so my 4 to 5 to 6 day a week regimen has now been 2 to 3 for the past several weeks. And so, but the purpose of it for me is there's a lot of layers to that. One, I think number one is that it's my time, and I love having that time for myself. It's the time that it's one of the only things I do just for me. And so that's kind of maybe the self-care part. 2, as you kind of mentioned earlier, even as I don't do personal training anymore, although this coaching thing does kind of offer the opportunity to guide people through exercise, which would be a great opportunity to work with somebody that way. But nobody wants to come see a physical therapist either who doesn't kind of present themselves in a way that looks like taking care of themselves.
Right.
You wouldn't want to go to a bariatric surgeon who is obese You know, you wouldn't want to go necessarily to an orthopedic surgeon that walks in with a limp. Right. And so, you know, I mean, there is that. And I mean, there's the aesthetics of it too. I like to look fit, you know, you know, and it's no longer that for anyone else. My wife accepts me when I am, you know, a little bit softer or not so soft. She doesn't care. So
You two kill me with both of you are tremendously fit, period. And I know everybody has their own sense of when they feel their best, but I know sometimes when you've made posts in the past, and even Brooke has as well, about, you know, working hard, and you all did that 75 hard program and everything together. And yeah, you come out looking like someone getting ready to be on American Ninja Warrior, but that's just not a sustainable thing given how much you have to give up. But I also think sometimes, you know, I look at people like the two of you, and I'm just like, they do not know what it means to be fat. What they're talking about as being whatever, but it's all relative. I get it. But at the same time, you know, you guys are never really unfit, either of you.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We're aware, but it's, you know, and that goes back to, wanting what I want for myself.
Right.
And when I talk to somebody who comes and talks to me either clinically or on this coaching thing, you know, it's not that, and that's kind of goes back to when you go find a young personal trainer, they think you want what they want. Right. And that's not how that relationship should work. That relationship is a service, and they should be wanting to help you get to where you want to be.
Exactly. And, you know, when you've got young kids, like, well, your kids aren't like young, and they're not like babies, but at the same time, I always tell parents that the things that they do, their kids are watching. And so therefore, the focus on your health and your well-being, the movement, your kids are terrifically active, and they're just great kids. I mean, you can just tell. And they're active in their own ways. And I don't think there'll probably be a point in their life where there be anything less than active. So there's also that element of it, which I think is important, is that they are taking cues from what they see between you and Brooke and applying it to their own life. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, at various levels. I mean, they all have their own personalities.
Sure.
Kind of have interest. I have one. If he could sit on the couch and watch YouTube every day, all day, that would be his life. But yeah, you know, and it's also something that I don't force on them.
Right.
I think it's important that they come to it themselves, like I did.
Yeah.
You know, my examples at home, my dad was, you know, kind of a white collar guy. He was a banker. You know, that generation's exercise wasn't
right. I get
what they did, you know what I mean? And so, but I think, you know, my 17-year-old daughter, she'll go out in my gym every once in a while, a couple days a week, and do her own little thing. And, you know, they all do their own stuff. And I think that they just need to come to it themselves with us being a good example, like you said.
Now, your gym is in a barn. And what is the name you've given it?
The Fortress of Barnitude, like Superman's fortress.
And for folks who will be able to tune in, we'll have Tom, you know, tell you where he can be found when we're closing out. But when you get a chance and you go and look at some of his videos, it's quite the impressive gym, and it's a lot of working out going on in there. Hey, I wanted to ask you another question, which is, as you're looking at where you want this effort of yours to go, where you're coaching people on these things, what is it you have set as a goal for when you will feel, or I should say when you will think, that it has achieved what you have wanted to achieve with it? What is the goal there?
Yeah, when I first started doing this, I sat long and hard and thought about that. And did some, you know, some writing, just some free writing goals and stuff. And at first I was like, man, maybe I want to be all in on this, and I really wanted this to be what I do. There is some drawbacks to doing it full time, but I don't want to it's like basically, I don't want to put a limit on where this can go, but I also I just want it to grow organically. I want it to become whatever it needs to become without me having an expectation, because that really, like I said, we're super busy. And if I'm going to say, oh, I want this to be my full-time job, I'm set myself up for disappointment maybe. And at the same time, I'm not going to sit back and not work at it. So I'm at the point now with this things, like, I just want to put some work behind it and, help as many people as I can, and it'll become whatever it needs to become for me, for whoever's involved.
And speaking of being able to help as many people as you can, why don't you tell our viewers and listeners where they can find you and how?
Yeah, I am on, everything is Tom Barbata DPT. So I'm on Instagram, Tom Barbata DPT. Facebook is Tom Barbata DPT. And so is, I'm dabbling with YouTube and TikTok. But I'm not putting maybe a ton of effort there. I think Instagram is probably where my main focus is. But I've got all my videos posted on all 4 places.
And I want to ask you about those videos, by the way.
Yeah.
The creativity is awesome. And let's face it, they're goats. Okay. So tell me about how you have found a way to align physical movement, therapy, coaching, and goats. I'm interested. Tell me about this.
I think it's more of a space issue, Charles, than like trying to make some sort of statement. I mean, my gym is out in my shop and my kids are doing 4-H and they're raising these animals, and we needed space for them inside, and it was either the house or the barn. So they're not coming inside. I don't know, it kind of adds some ambiance to the whole thing.
The goats are supposedly stubborn, though. You seem to have a way with them, because during the time that you're doing your videos, they seem terrifically cooperative.
Let me tell you about the power of editing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll you make some videos yourself.
That's right.
I'm sure your house is a little more quiet, but I'll finally get those words exactly the way that I want them, and then one of the goats will, make a loud noise or bang into stuff. I'm like, take 2, here we go, take 20. So yeah, it's really art of editing more than them being cooperative.
So as we close out, Tom, I want to ask my final question, which I think is going to be very important. Not that there should be pressure on you, but it's a question that I think is important because it's what I want you to leave with the listeners and viewers about this particular issue. When I was doing your intro, I talked about the fact that so many people find an excuse for why they can't do the things that they want to do with their life. And often those things originate from physical ailments, sickness and whatnot. When you have something that is organic that you can't deal with, if it's an actual disease that's debilitating, that's one thing. But this is about the ability to take control of what may fall away from you with disuse, re-engage it, and changing your entire life if you choose to. For a person who may be listening or viewing, who thinks that, I'm just going to let it happen, I'll be fine. How would you, if they were sitting in front of you, respond to the question of, what can I do to improve my life without making it necessary to break my back every day to do it, working out and doing it 7 days a week, twice a day? How would you respond to that?
It's so simple. It's go take a walk, honestly. I mean, that's a start. I mean, we start talking about, data and literature and studies, and, moving is better than not moving. And you could get in the weeds and overanalyze that whole, I posted a video a while back about paralysis by analysis. Like, some people want to do the perfect thing for them, right? But if you're not doing anything, the perfect thing for you is to do something and just move, just get up and move. It can be going for a walk. If you get winded walking around the block, one time, do that for now. And then increase. There's this really simple rule. It's the 5% rule, and you can apply it to cardiovascular exercise. You can apply it to resistance training. And it is, if you can figure out what your baseline is and know that that's a safe place for you to exercise, then you could increase your volume, whether that be distance or time or repetitions or amount of weight, any one of those variables, you increase it 5% a week. And then that's a safe way to increase it. That is doable. It doesn't feel like you're climbing a mountain because it's a very 5% is nothing. I mean, that's a half a repetition of a 10 set or a 10 repetition set, So it's simple. Just do something and then slowly increase it over time. It's the best way to succeed.
My mama, who I quote all the time, used to always tell me how interesting she found human beings, because she says, listen, child, she says, nothing is really difficult. It's humans who complicate the hell out of everything. So as I listen to you give that advice, your overall summarized view of it is, don't make it hard, right?
Right.
Just don't make it hard. Yeah,
that's it. It's so simple. Just keep it simple. Like, people, it's like looking, especially with social media, you look at these influencers who are, you got to do this particular diet and exercise this particular, well, you're already fit. You're already there. Of course, those minor tweaks are going to make a big difference for you. But if you are on the couch, minor tweaks is not what you need. You need big picture things to do that are going to help you get moving. That's it.
Right. And the get moving part is so important, just because that I loved where you began this at the outset of the episode, where our bodies are literally created to move. And when we aren't doing that, we are stopping ourselves from serving the purpose we were created to serve. And I have to remind myself of that, because it's so easy to get in the habit of not doing than it is to reverse that and get in the habit of doing. So I can tell you personally, I mentioned the rowing earlier. I had convinced myself that I would break it up and do 2 a days, right? I do half of it in the morning, half of it in the evening when I get home from work. I am a morning person. I wake up extremely early compared to most people. I am at my best in the morning. I can do a lot more in the morning than I can in the evening. So after a week of trying to come home and convince myself that I was going to do that other half, I was like, this is not working at all. So that's part of what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Make it work.
Yeah. That's that whole mindset of I should do what, like, why should you do that? Well, why, you know what I mean? You have to, if there's a valid reason, like I get up in the morning and I know that I need, 20 minutes of movement a day, and I am out the door so fast, all I can get is 10 minutes and I have to start my day. Okay. Then let's talk about breaking it up in the day, maybe doing a couple of sessions. But if it is that, like, you think it's better for your metabolism or it's all those things, those improvements are so minute. I mean, again, it's almost immeasurable compared to the gross net effect you're going to get of just doing it all in the morning when you're at your best and feeling good. And you like it then. Like, you like it.
Exactly.
Right? And if you don't like it, you're not going to do it.
Exactly.
And that's key with exercise. You got to find something you like.
Exactly. And you heard it here first, folks. And Tom, thank you for joining us as our guest today. I think that you will be giving a lot of people something to think about, and hopefully something to get off their butts and actually do as a result of this. And we will be putting up Tom's information in terms of where you can find him on the various social media at the end of this episode. But I, again, just want to thank you for what I knew would be another great conversation. You've certainly helped me, and I think you're going to help a whole hell of a lot of other people. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PoolePRoof Wisdom Podcast. We always enjoy the company. Be sure to listen, like, subscribe, and share using Google and Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, Anchor, Overcast, YouTube, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this episode, we'd appreciate it very much if you simply tell a friend about the podcast too. Spread the word. Until next time, keep on living.